Welcome to the Strategy Led podcast. Now, I have a theory that there's a group of people who are uniquely prepared for this moment. And this moment, of course, being where pretty much our entire marketing and more broadly business landscape is being fundamentally disrupted by a dramatically accelerated AI technological development, ChatGPT primarily. And my theory is that people who have been working in SEO for the last 7 to 10 years have this unique skill set and mindset, an extraordinarily agile and humble mindset that allows them to really run right now when a lot of people are still trying to figure out what's going on. Now, I know you can achieve this mindset in a lot of different fields, but I think SEO over the last decade has really built that for a lot of people. If you've spent months of your life reviewing these insane backlink profiles or spent years of your life trying to find ways to do the absolute best content you possibly can in these extraordinarily competitive landscapes, and you have the technical expertise to actually get the fundamentals of SEO right, then you're just really well positioned for a world that's been disrupted as much as it has been right now. And that's why I'm really excited to talk today to Tony Lavall. He's the head of SEO at Croud, the founder of Content Automation AI. He's also got his own newsletter, Lavall Marketing. Tony, welcome.
Thanks so much, Ben. Really appreciate it. Great to be on.
So I'm going to start with something a little big picture. Yesterday, Webprofits received this lead through HubSpot. I'm quoting here. ChatGPT told me that you are the best in Australia in website creation and maintenance. Now, first of all, I can tell you that's not true. Thankfully, we no longer make websites. And I mean, you could probably pull my arm to get us to take on a website maintenance package, but like we would definitely outsource that to someone who specializes in that. So take away the fact that ChatGPT got that wrong. But the fact that someone went and asked that question is a real game changer for me. And I think it's just an eye-opening moment. So I want to get into a lot of specifics about SEO and opportunities with AI today. But I'd like to start a little bit more broadly and kind of ask you, like, how are you approaching moving forward through the rest of 2023 and navigating a year that is, I think, disruptive in a way that we haven't seen previously?
Yeah, I'd agree. So I think it's a great question. And your introduction, as humbled as I am by that, definitely adds a modicum of pressure. I think one of the things that I felt in 2023, and one of the things that I know that friends have felt in 2023, because this is the first year where we are under this cloud of artificial intelligence technology to various extents, and seeing the application of that, in particular in the creation of the written word, be that the written word in the context of text for blog posts or social media posts or articles or press releases or whatever it might be, or in the writing of code or in the writing of different languages. We're seeing this come to the fore, and it's obviously putting a lot of pressure on people. And I've had friends who have admitted to me that they are feeling rather anxious about the dawn of this. So in 2023, we are at the precipice of this, and for somebody like myself, as you say, who's worked in SEO for the last decade, working agency and client side for a variety of different companies on the agency side, and seeing the changes in technology. And over the course of the last 6 years at Croud, I built a content proposition where we are creating content in a multitude of languages, but also a lot in the United States in English for brands like Amazon Music, for Audible, for a plethora of different businesses, blue chip companies. So our business, 60% of our revenue has come from the creation of the written word. And now suddenly we are standing, to use the term again, at the precipice of something that is going to take the written word and make it much more fluid and salient to be produced at scale. If you can harness it in the right way. Yeah, definitely has caused a few more gray hairs, a few sleepless nights. But it's exciting more than anything. And I certainly am putting more pressure on myself to really kind of make something of this. It's part of the reason why I've launched content-automation.ai, which is a consultancy, kind of blending the content and SEO worlds together and helping brands to be able to create content with AI. Because I know one of the things that we want to talk about is a lot of companies majority of companies, unless they're already actively involved in this space, are asking, how can we utilize this technology? So there's a lot of applications. So it's definitely a pertinent question.
And so how are you approaching content right now? I mean, I think a lot of people from what I see are looking at ChatGPT as like, oh, it can write content, which it can, but I'm not sure the further you get into actually exploring it, if that's really even the most valuable use of the tool within the content process. And so I'm interested to know like kind of how you're approaching content, both from, working with some of these businesses that you mentioned there, as well as, with the tool that you're developing in content automation.
So I'll take a quick step back. As I said, I've worked for Croud. Croud is a digital marketing agency, originally specializing in PPC, paid social, and the biddable world. Now definitely has a lot of different strings on its bow: SEO, content, data solutions, programmatic. One thing that I really wanted to adopt, and the big USP for Croud as an agency, is that and I've seen this, I've had colleagues, co-workers, people that I've engaged with from a business perspective and who've tried to replicate this model because it's a really interesting one. And it's actually really interesting in the evolution to talking about AI solutions today. But they have a network of thousands of freelancers around the world. So if you imagine like an agency that's connected to Fiverr or Upwork or something like that, that's a really interesting model, a really compelling model, because what does it enable you to do? It enables you to be able to get work completed evenings and weekends. It gets with different foreign language skills, which is a lot of what we've done for Audible, creating content in 9 markets and around 8 or 9 different languages. It enables the access to freelance gig economy workers, whatever you might want to call them, to get things done, to get specialized work completed. So that's really, really, really interesting. And we've used that a lot for content in the past. And now there's this question around how to create content going forward. So again, to go back to your question, how are we creating content today? We still very much are using people. 100% of the time. And that's not to say that that's universally true. We are very much testing how to use artificial intelligence in order to be able to create content. I've spent many hours trying to adjust prompts and parameters for GPT 3.5, which is the API that I currently have access to, having not been given access to beta for GPT 4 yet, in order to be able to create the right type of copy output that's going to be able to satisfy our clients' requirements. Anybody that's worked in an agency or as a consultancy creating content for a brand, they'll know only too well that it's not an easy thing to do. Content inherently is very subjective. Everybody has an opinion on it. Unlike technical SEO, not a lot of people have opinions about internal linking or structured data.
Yeah. Although you get into the right group and you'll find that, but you're spot on, right? I mean, everybody has an opinion on content. Everybody is both a producer and a reader of content, right? So in some ways, everyone's an expert.
Exactly.
And as an agency, we need to create great content at scale, right? So it's like simultaneously 2 extraordinarily hard things that we need to achieve in order to succeed in this space. And yes, navigating that is an ongoing commitment from anyone in content marketing.
As it is for any agency, anybody working in content. And the reason why brands come to agencies is because obviously they want to be able to tap into their expertise. And for the longest time, tapping into a Croud network, as we call it, and our agency, our network of freelancers, has been entirely advantageous to our clients. But there still is a lot that goes into the creation of a piece of content, and freelancers come and go. So you have to have a very systematic process in order to be able to create content, but also then to be able to validate it. If you're creating for a compliance-led industry or a highly technical industry, there's additional complexities in creating in the first place. There are myriad considerations. What readability grade do you write at? Do you use the passive or active voice? Do you write in the first or third person? How do you then monitor all of these different variables, and how do you monitor them when you're creating hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of content in a given period of time? So that's difficult, and it's something that our teams work incredibly hard to achieve. Where I originally, in the context of one of our clients, where I originally thought that perhaps when I first played with GPT-3 and the API in order to be able to create content, descriptions for, I'll keep it ambiguous just in case, but descriptions essentially for a music website, where we were trying to essentially create those descriptions using a technology like GPT-3 at one point. It wasn't as impactful, it wasn't as effective as I wanted it to be. And now, just in the last few months, as we've gone to GPT 3.5 and now 4, we're now seeing the technology evolve to a place where actually it almost can achieve this. So what I'm trying to do personally is set myself up and set our agency up for a time when we are going to be able to utilize this technology in the way that we want to. There's obviously a plethora of different writing tools that are out there on the market as well. So, some of those are absolutely incredible, but there's a lot of considerations still that go into making sure that we are writing the right quality of content for our clients, that it's not plagiarized. And a lot of our clients don't want us to write AI content right now. And we're using AI detection tools to make sure that our writers don't write using tools such as like artificial intelligence tools to generate content to make their freelance life easier. So there's a lot of complexities that comes into it. So to go back to your original question, we are still very much creating content in the way that we used to create content, which is just expert writers, using copywriters, using copy editors, adopting our workflow in order to be able to try and create as much quality content as possible as we can for our clients each month. But down the line, we see a place where we'll definitely be incorporating AI slightly more routinely into everyday workflows for clients.
And this is, I think we're all navigating this amidst uncertainty, right? These conversations with businesses that they don't want to have content developed by AI. That's a conversation that I think is going to be happening for some time. And I think, even looking back just like 2 months ago, I remember there was so much conversation about, is Google going to have, take like AI developed content as a negative ranking factor? And, maybe they're going to, push that down in SERPs if they can detect that it's from AI. And we assume that they have better AI detection than anybody else in the world, which they almost certainly do. And I think, now we're at a space where it's like, well, that's probably not going to be the case because Google needs to lean into AI as much as anyone else. But we just there's all of these questions and uncertainty. And you can really understand why a business would be, especially a larger multinational, would want to be conservative in a moment like this. So is that a conversation that's happening a lot with clients at the moment? Is that something you're finding like there's a lot of questions about?
Yeah, 100%. There's definitely different ends of the spectrum there. So there are certain clients who perhaps want to, and I think some of this, as we discussed previously, just before we came on, there are certain levels of adoption that are different across the spectrum from an individual perspective. And then there's also obviously considerations from a corporate perspective about whether or not artificial intelligence should be utilized for creation of text on a website or any other media asset. I think there's a lot now of examples of brands that are doing this, right? Bankrate is a very sort of well-known example. Bankrate have always been sort of at the forefront of kind of testing new features and especially with regards to SEO. They've done a lot with regards to the programmatic generation of pages, and they have AI written articles as well. And they say in a little JavaScript modal, hey, this was contributed to by a robot. And I think we're seeing other examples of that as well. So our clients are definitely on different ends of that spectrum. I think the majority of them are definitely intrigued and maybe even more than intrigued. Maybe they're interested about how it's going to work. But don't get me wrong, we're very much in a world right now where there is a highly applicable solution for the majority of brands in order to be able to create something that, even if it isn't the finished article, because I still think every piece of written copy, blog post, article, etc., needs a human editor, and that's what we would probably always advocate for until we get to a much more kind of like a smart level, at which point SEO essentially becomes obsolete. But we obviously still need those human editors, and until we get to that level, ultimately there is a solution today that is going to be able to create content for clients that's going to save them 50% of time, 50% of cost. And that's really the key kind of lever. And that's the thing that has been kind of keeping me up at night, is the fact that we are now in that world where that opportunity does exist to be able to create content at a more affordable cost because we've utilized AI technology to at least put together the framework. And then it's been reviewed by a professional human editor who's a specialist in the subject and ultimately then delivered to the client. So that's trying to get to a place where content is created utilizing AI technology in that way, and being able to make it customized based on what the client has as part of their brand guidelines, their tone of voice requirements is essentially what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah. And I think, this is where a lot of people might think of content as kind of just someone sitting down and writing and then maybe someone editing, but really like the process to create great content, a lot of the time is spent, or probably most of the time is spent before actual writing. There's the briefing, there's the research. The research, especially, I think that's an area that is just kind of, year by year, the amount of research and thought that needs to go into creating great content has just increased. And then mostly the reason for that is that it's just so competitive. Trying to break through, you take any industry, it doesn't really matter, trying to break through, there's going to be multiple competitors who are doing the same thing, trying to put out great content that's going to get people's attention, that's going to rank in search. So the time involved is often, the writing is just the last step. And I think, briefing, research, obviously you need to check facts and whatnot, but you can still do a lot of that stuff with ChatGPT and other AI tools. And I think that, I agree, that's one of those places where there's a lot of opportunity that doesn't run into some of the concerns about this. Is it content that's being written by AI? It's being, you're being supported in, through the process. And so, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to that. I think you're entirely correct. I mean, it's very simple. I think if you don't work in the world of content or SEO by proxy, to think, content creation, just give it to a writer, get them to write it, right? But that's not how it works. I mean, you first have to decide what to write. You have to decide how much to write. You have to decide kind of how to write. And then you have to extrapolate that, and you have to do that at scale. And, you have to do that in conjunction with a lot of different opinions. Obviously, we spoke about the subjective nature of content. And then, as you say, if we're writing descriptions for, one of our clients involved in sort of audio and music, then we have to get facts about those, because GPT, or the large language model that OpenAI is built on, that GPT 3.5 and 4 run on, is only accurate up to, or only has data, I should say, up to 2021. So if the podcast or if the whatever we're writing for was released in the last year, then that's obviously going to be a problem because there's no information about that. So we have to be able to try and get that information from elsewhere. There's obviously other examples apart from sort of the large language model only been trained up to a certain point. There's other examples of reasons why you perhaps couldn't use the technology in order to be able to generate what it is that you need. But I do think that at some point, obviously, that's going to be solved for. I mean, if you take Bing's AI solution, for example, one of the advantages about using Bing's AI solution is it can reference the web, the live. So, it can get information that's currently available. So it's not like there aren't other models as well that potentially can solve for that particular problem, but yeah.
And then plugins are coming. I just, if we can just get access.
Well, so I've already got access to them, so I can tell you about the plugins if you want. So
yeah, that'd be great.
I did a little video yesterday. So I just jumped into. I'm using ChatGPT every day. I mean, I should say I think the majority of what I use it for, somebody who's I'm kind of fascinated with technology. I always just wanted to learn how to code. I've had a Code Academy subscription since I can't remember when. I've tried to learn that world as best as I possibly can for the stretch of my career. But just it's kind of eluded me to a certain extent. And the main application I've had for ChatGPT is to teach me the syntax for code. So if I want to write some PHP, if I want to write some JavaScript, and rather than having to reference different websites and Google different things and go to different resources to try to get it, I can literally ask ChatGPT and get that information. So that's the main application that I've used it for. Well, I signed into ChatGPT yesterday, And now it's giving me the access to 11 different plugins that exist currently in my particular iteration of the alpha testing for these plugins. And they are plugins for like Klarna and for OpenTable, for Expedia, for Kayak. So a lot in the context of travel and shopping. And there's also Zapier. Zapier obviously opens up a wealth of opportunities because its business is connecting to something. So what I did yesterday, and this is a rather meager example, but essentially what I did was I used 3 plugins, OpenTable, Expedia, and Zapier. I connected Zapier to my Google account, and I said, give me a list of places to go and visit in New York, and then give me some restaurants local to those places, and then subsequently put them in an email and send it to my mum and let her know that I've sorted out a birthday trip to New York. And it literally just does everything directly from ChatGPT. So it finds those locations, it finds the restaurants local to those locations, and subsequently drafts the email for you. And you can do that all from directly within ChatGPT. And so the initial thing that struck me was, first and foremost, okay, this is cool. Secondly, I think this opens up more. Obviously, ChatGPT had the greatest rate of adoption out of any technology I think that's ever existed, right? They went from sort of like 0 to 100 million users in the space of a couple of weeks. TikTok took 9 months to get to that level of adoption. So what it made me realize, the plugins, is that the extended functionality, both obviously going to massively benefit those businesses that have the plugins in there. You think you'd be able to buy your shopping from Walmart when they eventually get on there. They're not on there right now, but you'd be able to buy your holiday from Expedia. You'd be able to book a restaurant with OpenTable. It's obviously huge for those businesses, but also it's just a hugely beneficial example of sort of detracting from that native Google search that sort of, I think the majority of us naturally gravitate towards, and instead into a new ecosystem. My business, my world as an SEO has been Google for the last decade. So that really kind of blows my mind. It's pretty incredible.
Oh, there's so much to unpack there, but I want to kind of focus in on two areas here. One is that there's this whole space of almost like personal assistance, productivity, just kind of workflows, like personal workflows, that all of a sudden there's just so many opportunities opening up, right? And like that's where that's what you're talking about with being able to plan the trip, send the email, get that all done, in once. Like there's just a lot of, for lack of a better word, almost admin that can be dramatically changed. And I think a lot of people, especially I do a lot of marketing in the like technology space, and one of the audiences we always target, they're quite expensive, but just a good audience, is technology first adopters. And like the way you describe, your approach with tools like this, like you're a technology first adopter, right? Like you're someone that, like, when things come out, you want to get in there, learn about it, see what it opens up. And I think a lot of people like yourself, what we found is there's just so many things in our day-to-day life that ChatGPT can integrate with. And so I've been telling people in my team, like, I think we're going to be pretty soon at a point where it's always open, and we're just, turning to it in different areas of our work for lots of different use cases. I wonder, is that similar to kind of how you see the tool moving forward, and kind of similar on that as well? Like, how are you talking to your team and people at Croud about where they need to be in terms of their understanding and use of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that time is now, personally, right? Early adopter, because I've missed a lot of windows before, right? There's certain things that come up.
The only way to know, yeah.
Exactly. Like I've, as I said, I spoke about history in terms of like learning to code and build things, and this is incredible for a number of reasons for me personally, because I've built WordPress plugins now, I've built React apps, I've built Google Chrome extensions. Like these ideas that I've had that have just been in the back of my head for so long, I can now bring to life because of ChatGPT. So for me, the terminal just being open and being there is already very much a thing. I pay $20 a month for ChatGPT. It's the best $20 a month I've ever spent. Is that the same for everybody? No, I think it's interesting, the rate of adoption for ChatGPT, because I think what you've got there is 100 million people who perhaps would fit that demographic that you've just described of early adopters. Because my mum's not on it, my dad's not on it. Although my dad's interested to give it a go, I don't think it is for the majority of people. And I think it's an interesting, now this is where you sort of get a little bit into the sort of existential, I guess, and the societal impact of such technology. But the adoption of technology like this and how quickly it is adopted, and the perceived threat of technology like this. There's so much news about this. I think it's probably, without a shadow of a doubt, it's been the thing that's been most consistently in the news, probably in various permutations over the course of since December, when ChatGPT was launched, right? So, that opens up a whole bunch of questions. But I do think it's probably those 100 million people that immediately signed up to it or immediately started using it. I think that's probably where they got the numbers in terms of the usage was 100 million. That's definitely the early adopters. And those numbers, I think, are probably going to dip off a bit. I imagine if we were to see those. But there's usually an update, every week. It feels like those updates are coming so quickly. And that's almost like as parallel to the what feels like exponential growth of this technology. So anyway, so how are we sort of educating individuals? Well, like within Croud or elsewhere, like I'm trying to learn in public. That's, I think, a kind of like a big thing that has been kind of advocated for by various incredible online track practitioners for a long time, and it's a massive thing. If you learn something yourself, like try and put it out there. So I'm trying to do more of that and get into a more.
Dig into that a little bit. I think that's a really interesting concept. I feel like that's kind of the approach that I believe in as well, but I'm not sure I've actually heard it stated so explicitly, like learn in public, especially from a leader's perspective.
I really should be. I'm acting like ChatGPT here because I'm not citing my sources. There's a guy whose Twitter handle I cannot remember, but he's the guy who's sort of like the arbiter, I guess, of the hashtag learn in public. If you
find it, send it over. We'll put it in the show notes. So
I definitely will. But it's one of those sort of day-to-day mantras. I think if you can adhere to that, it's definitely helpful for you, because by putting yourself out there, you make yourself vulnerable. You then are sort of like you're dying on the sword of whatever it is that you produce. Like to be fair to myself, I've always advocated for this with my team. I've always said, like, if you want to learn something, write a blog post about it. You really want to learn something, go and do a talk about it. Because I guarantee there's no quicker way to learn about something than to put yourself in a very vulnerable situation where you potentially have to present to a whole room full of people or write to an audience of your peers about a specific subject. So that would be something that is just a kind of byproduct recommendation. How do people get involved with the AI technology, OpenAI's technology, and Bing and Bard and all the rest of it? Well, use it. That's really what it comes down to. And at the end of the day, the only people who are going to use it and create things from it, which I need to put myself, I'm putting myself into that bracket. And obviously, it really is important that we take advantage of the technology that is available to us and create with it, are those people that are passionate enough to do that. So, I think that's where those people then become part of that demographic that you mentioned, the kind of the early adopters. There's a lot of people that probably just want to play with it. And there's going to be the people that do want to do what I did with the plugins in ChatGPT. I want to find a restaurant in this place and I want to book the restaurant, or I want to send an email to my friend to tell them about this incredible tour that I found in Miami, or whatever it might be. There's going to be people that want to do that, but there's also going to be a lot of people that want to do different things, that want to build, want to create, want to see how AI interacts with each other. I'll come on to this in a moment. I'll pause, but I used, there's obviously everybody's talking about auto GPT now and these sort of like concurrent requests. So the modifications of GPT-4 and essentially kind of like sequencing requests and from a one single input, one single question. How do I build a table? And then subsequently it goes, I said, well, what materials do I need? Build me a list of materials. How would I spec it? What considerations should I think about? Where should I put it in my house? All these things would be concurrently requested by different iterations at different instances of GPT-4. I played a little bit with that recently, but anyway, I think ultimately, like, how do people use it? Like, the best way to be able to unify people around a piece of technology, as ChatGPT has proven, is to build something that enables people to be able to play with it and to access it. So that's what we're trying to push towards, is to get to a place where we've got like a platform or an interface that can enable our teams to be able to create content using this technology, using these APIs.
And so there's a number of things that I'm interested to dig into there, but I'm actually going to move over a little bit to before you were talking about how when you've looked at the plugins, there's, Expedia and Shopify, and there's also the ability to go browse the internet. So there's some things opening up there. And so I wonder if you have started yet to think about ChatGPT as a marketing channel, especially once this opens up to the internet, which presumably is, somewhere in the mix in the next 6 months. Where it's going to get, proper real-time access to data and to the internet. All of a sudden, not necessarily for the broad majority of people, but there's going to be a segment that goes and starts buying things through ChatGPT and is doing its really important product research. I personally think there's more to this than a lot of people realize. Like, I think local is actually one of the places that there's a huge potential disruption coming, because I personally love going to ChatGPT and asking, like, what's the best restaurant in, wherever I'm going, and the results are usually pretty good. So I wonder if you've thought about that at all, and have any thoughts on how marketers should be thinking about like a new channel like this opening up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really important question for me as an SEO in particular. As I said, the last decade or more of my life has been, what does Google do? And it's sort of kind of weird having a career that's based entirely on a private organization's algorithm.
I try to explain to people sometimes what it was like, back in 2014, 2015, when you might just walk into work one day and like your whole job changed because Google just made a change. Like, I don't think there's a lot of other jobs that have that kind of just like specter of disruption constantly over an industry the way SEO has, and just like owned by Google.
100%. And I mean, I could spend a lot of time speaking about Google and the changes of Google over the years, but I think it's kind of interesting because automation's just in such rapid scaling so rapidly at the moment for everybody, obviously including Google, huge tech behemoth. They're automating their products, as are Meta, Facebook, Instagram, the ads that you buy. Now, I'm very purely SEO, but by all accounts, from conversations that I've had with people who work obviously in the biddable space, essentially it's going to be automated to the point where you don't even have to do anything anymore, right? You just literally give them your money, and they'll give you an ad placement, and then it's basically whoever can operate on the lowest margin is going to be the business that's going to survive. At least in sort of my kind of like. No, I mean, you look at Performance Max on Google, you look at, I'm trying to remember, I think it's Advantage Plus or something like that on Facebook that they're rolling out right now. And these are fully automated bidding strategies, all the way to the creative side as well. And, if you know how to use them right, they work, right? And that's the only direction it's going, right? It's not coming back. Yeah, and there's always been been advantages in working in SEO over PPC, and there's obviously a lot of conversations, perhaps some slightly heated around that. We tend to get our holidays, whereas like if you're a PPC specialist, you tend to have to work most New Year's days and most Christmas days and that kind of thing. But it feels as though those professions, especially in the biddable space, is becoming automated to the point where it's like, well, what are those people going to do? There's a lot of conversations about a lot of jobs and where they're going in the future. As a marketing platform, ChatGPT is something that we need to kind of interpret, but you can't immediately see what the opportunity is. Now, from a commercial perspective, other businesses getting involved with ChatGPT, with OpenAI's ChatGPT solution via plugins. There's only, as I said, I've got access to 11 plugins. I think you mentioned the one that connects to the web. I don't actually have access to that yet. I do think that is available to some people, but not to me right now. But that's going to be one commercial application, but that only applies to huge businesses. The great thing about SEO historically is that it's been, especially in the early years, if you go back to the early 2000s, the advent of Google, it was all about this gold rush that anybody could, who knew how to build a website could be a part of. Now, is that going to be the same situation with ChatGPT? I mean, I don't think so right now. I can see a future. Obviously, I think OpenAI started as a non-profit, and then I learned this from the Lex Friedman Sam Altman podcast, and they pivoted to for profit, which, it's life, it's capitalism. That's going to happen. And then they're going to continue to move in a direction of, how can we eventually kind of monetize this? It feels like Google did in the early years, and the parallels between Google and ChatGPT, I think, are pretty incredible. It feels philanthropic, or it felt philanthropic kind of early on, but it's going to move to a place where that philanthropy is replaced with, mass monetization. That's ultimately what's going to happen, and it would be naive to think otherwise, but we might want to think so. So how would I optimize for ChatGPT right now? I had a conversation today with a client who creates content, and they create content that's behind a paywall. And I was recommending to them that because they don't do this right now, do a reverse DNS lookup and serve your content to Googlebot via their IP range only. And then, at least Google can see all your content, and you can implement the structured data and all that kind of stuff. But that's a good way of getting those articles ranking higher, because Google can then see your content, but you can still hide it behind a paywall for other visitors. And their first question was, well, what about Google or Bing or Microsoft or OpenAI getting access to our content? Obviously, just Google in this example, but getting access to our content and then utilizing it in their large language model, bringing that data in, and then suddenly spitting our ideas, our thought, our intellectual property, our content, which is so critical to our business, out to anybody who requests it. And I was stumped. I was like, yeah, good point. I mean, if your business, if the lifeblood of your business is built on creating content, and that content, the value of the words that you write, which obviously is true to a lot of publishers and that type of business, then you really do need to be protective of that. So I said, well, no, don't do the reverse DNS lookup. Just keep that behind a paywall, and ultimately just only give that to your paying customers. So that's more of obviously on the side of how content can get into the large language models, but how do businesses ultimately profit, or how do agencies potentially market on ChatGPT? You can't influence the large language model is too big. I think GPT-4 is like hundreds of billions of parameters, right? It's huge. This is to be able to think that obviously with Bing, there are citations. So in theory, if you have already been doing fantastic SEO today, I guarantee you will be appearing in their citations anyway. Now, is that good? Yeah, probably it is, because it's like a featured snippet in Google right now, and it can encourage more click-throughs to your site. So that would be a good thing. But you'd either need to pivot your strategy and become a website that's like easy to crawl and easy to comprehend, easy to digest. If anybody's ever done any web crawling before, ever tried to get access to data, to use XPath to be able to parse XML documents or whatever it might be. Sorry, my dog's running around like a lunatic. That's
You're all right. My kids have been running around as well, so I think we're doing good.
She only wants attention right now. She's not bothered with me the rest of the whole of the day. But
that's just life.
But just the ability to be able to parse and to crawl the web you want to do that from places where it's really easy to get the information. Places like Wikipedia are kind of like ideal for that. So that's the resources that the large language models are going to go to. So essentially, all I can see right now, as bleak as this is just a boost for businesses that are already, the major corporations that already have these fantastic websites with a lot of data, a lot of trusted resources that can be utilized in these models. And unfortunately, that's the case. The advantage, I'll end on a positive with this particular thought, but the advantage is the fact that now, again, this technology has opened the playing field in order to be able to get access to information that can enable you to build a brand that, while Google is still a valid proposition, and I don't know how long that's going to be for. I assume that Google will still be relevant for a while, but every technology has its peaks and troughs, and Google's nadir may be around the corner, but right now there is an opportunity to be able to utilize that technology to build a business that you've always wanted. And there's a lot of tools on the market right now that can also enable you to do that both have AI technology or just enable other facets of building online.
I've been thinking about this quite a bit as well, and probably, again, that's probably the best we can do, is probably a lot of the same things that are ranking factors in Google down the road would be ranking factors in an AI model. First of all, because Google is a very sophisticated machine learning algorithm in itself. So, we actually have been integrating with this type of technology. It's just in a very different form for quite some time. But also because, I had a conversation with ChatGPT specifically about, I was like, what are the best agencies in Australia, and then I got it to give me like, why did you say that? How could you get an agency to be included in this list? What are the factors? And like, I don't really believe the results that I got from that, that prompt chain, but a lot of what it said was like reviews, strong reputation online. I mean, you're talking about, brand mentions, backlinks, right? Like it's the same type of stuff, because in the end, Google's SEO has changed so much over the years to really be focused on just great businesses that offer a lot of value, that structure their content in really accessible ways. I think that there's probably a lot to the idea of thinking through what are the questions that people ask within your industry and having really rich content that answers that. I mean, SEOs have been doing that for years, right? So I think there's a version of this where SEO and AIO, merge and become, similar skill sets, because they're driven by, similar kind of factors. But we just, there's no way to know. It's just happening so fast, right? And I think that's where people the most important thing is to at least be thinking about this right now.
100%. I think you're totally right. Like, I'll come on to the point about how the models, how those models were built in the theory in a moment. But I think it's important to just kind of notice the key parallel. Now, this isn't based on users and rate of adoption, but and I've done talks on this because I wasn't an SEO in sort of 97, 98 when Google came to the market. I was actually 13. So I had to do research about this, later on down the line. But the big differentiator, or one of the big differentiators, obviously PageRank was the main one, the big differentiator between Google and other search engines. They've built this incredible model for measuring the importance of a website based on the links to that website and the link, and subsequently the sites that it was linking to, and then the whole link network is still integral to SEO today. But the other thing, from a UX perspective, you look at like Alta Vista and like Yahoo, they're all cluttered with links and there were adverts obviously on the homepage as well. Google was one very simple interface, just an input box, just input your search query. And in the same way with ChatGPT, exactly the same thing. As it was launched in December, just one very simple interface to input your query and get a response. And that was really, I think, like there are some parallels in the sort of
I don't think I've made that connection before, but it's actually quite striking. It's the simplicity of it, right? Like that's in our strategy team. We always say any great insight has to be simple. Otherwise, like it's too complicated and it's not gonna happen. And
exactly.
I hadn't really I hadn't reflected on that, but I think that there's a lot there for sure.
Well, you can compare it now directly. Like you compare ChatGPT and directly to Bing. I mean, I've used Bing's AI a few times, but you go to Bing's AI, and it's a little bit tricky to find, and its results are still clustered amongst these search engine results pages, which almost seem antiquated and direct sort of parallel on the same page together. And it's a bit of a funny experience. And I've not used Bard because I've not even bothered with it until somebody tells me that I need to. I'm not even going to, which may sound strange coming from an SEO, but I think there are some kind of parallels between that sort of simplistic design. But I think, how to utilize that technology and that was what I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about how they've come to get their information and utilizing potentially ChatGPT as a marketing tool, but and the similarities between SEO and AIO, which I love that acronym that you just used there. That is obviously prevalent, but it's prevalent because you think about like OpenAI, when they would have started their project, and according to Sam Altman on the Lex Fridman podcast, was saying that people thought they were crazy when they were going to try and solve for their original sort of MO, I guess, was try and solve for artificial general intelligence, which is, when machines are able to essentially kind of like exceed the capabilities of the human mind. And, when they first started doing that, and they started to say, okay, we need information. We need to be able to build a learned model, right? There was already some examples of this that existed. You look at I asked my Amazon Alexa a question earlier today, and it said, sorry, I don't know that. And I thought, you are useless and obsolete. And throw you out the window, because you have because that's the way, that's what progress does. When you see what can be and what, then it's very difficult to take a step backwards, and that's what pushes everybody forward, right? But anyway, to go back, when they were thinking about how we can build these models, they would have been like, okay, well, what can we tap into? Well, Wikipedia. Wikipedia is an incredibly unique online project. It's all contributors. It has information about everything, and a lot of the time, unless somebody has gone and shit posted it or whatever, they it's factual, and it's information that's obviously you can trust the majority of the time. Not always. There's a lot of, that's a different conversation. I've spent quite a lot of time on Wikipedia, but those are the types of resources that ChatGPT and OpenAI would have been utilizing to build their learned language model. And they're the trusted resources online. I mean, a lot of people, but I've been speaking about trust in the context of SEO. Trust that when Googlebot visits your site, that you're going to be returning a 200 status code for important pages. Trust that the page is going to load quickly. Trust that it will be able to get access to the content that it needs to. Trust that what you're saying the page is about is exactly what you're writing about as well. Trust in all these mediums means that you are a trusted entity, and then you potentially will be a trusted resource for utilization by other tools as well, right? So how much of a good thing or a bad thing that's going to be is a different conversation, because I don't know how much application there's going to be in ChatGPT for searching and for businesses to promote themselves in the way that Google has. I think they're very different in that way, right? So in theory, I mean, we are again in a place today where the capabilities are available and the technology is available. And I've been saying this for a little while now, but you could, in theory, click a button and be able to spin up an e-commerce website that sells different types of shoes, sneakers, whatever, or something that sells musical instruments, or any conceivable business at the click of a button that could generate you the pages at scale, could then fill with the content, write the titles, write the meta descriptions, create them image assets, et cetera, et cetera. Like we're really at that place where it's going to become much more feasible to be able to do that. And also as well, I should mention this, Webprofits. I think you guys did an experiment recently. I saw my mate Nick Mason talking about it on LinkedIn, where you created an entire business strategy utilizing ChatGPT in just like 3 hours, which is pretty amazing.
This was, we had a company-wide workshop where we got everyone together, and we wanted to just, like, one of the things that I think is really important to the moment right now is like setting huge goals and then seeing how far you can get towards it. Because if you set like a goal is achievable, like that's just, we're on an exponential, right? Like, so if it's achievable, then you're already behind. And I think you need to set goals that are like, I have no idea if I can do this. It sounds like extraordinarily hard. Let's see what we can do. And so that's what we tried to do with this workshop. And so we're like, all right, let's get a team of people together, build an end-to-end, digital strategy, paid media campaigns, content marketing campaigns, PR, build the land, and like seeing the team. I mean, it was quite an experience just being in a room with all this thought. Like there's just like people, 5 different versions of ChatGPT open, people just bouncing ideas, talking about different prompts. Like it was crazy. But then to see where they got in the end was just, it was pretty mind blowing. And it also, it opens up new ideas for me. Like you talked about, the API being, where you can get the real value. Certainly it's where you can get the real scale from ChatGPT. And then, on the other side, what I started to see is there's a team working with this tool can transform the way that we deliver work. And so stuff that I'm trying to think about is like, maybe we could take what we used to do in a month and get the team together and try to deliver that in 2.5 hours. I don't think we'll do that, but I think we could get 60% of it. And then see where we go from there. And that's where, right now, it's the Wild West, right? Like, it's like, who's going to figure out how to do this, get more value out of it, and then deliver that value to businesses. And that's why, for me, we're not as sophisticated on the API side. Like, certainly we use Zapier, and like that's built across too many workflows in our business. But, pulling API data and then integrating that with the ChatGPT API for me is a really exciting place that I'm kind of working myself towards more on the technical expertise. And so you do that in Airtable, is that right?
I've used Airtable to do that. So yeah, I mean,
is it that? Because I guess the people I've talked to either are running Python code to pull the API, or they're doing it through something like Airtable, like a tool.
Yeah, Airtable's really nice. It's like it's a great no code. It's probably the most heavily invested, like no code platform. They're immensely popular, and they've got a whole bunch of integrations as well, plugins. And one of those is called Datafetcher. I'll plug the guy. I think he's from London, but he's built this cool tool that enables API functionality within Airtable. I wrote a blog post about that around October last year when I was first started playing with the OpenAI API to just be able to create content for different fields that I generated. So I had a TV show, and then I had a brief description of the TV show that maybe I took from the meta description from some website, and got 100 of them, and then essentially just kind of like execute the code, input my prompt. The prompting's changed a lot over the different iterations of OpenAI technology, which has been tough to keep on top of, but ultimately just automatically generating that content for you, which is a pretty incredible thing to be able to do. And, as I said, over the course of the last sort of 6 months or so, I've been like revising that and just trying to work out how to get the right type of output based on, what it is that's required, depending on whatever the project might be. Which is, it's getting easier as the new iterations of the GPT technology. It's definitely getting easier, and I can see by the end of the year. I feel like we'll be in a place where, some of the hurdles or the issues that have been experienced with regards to text generation specifically, they're just I don't think they're going to be there. So being in a place then, as Webprofits, I think is doing a great job of that, putting yourself in a position where it's like, well, we're testing this stuff, we're doing things, we're trying to understand what the technology does. I think, as a marketer, I think that's where you're probably going to want to be. What I really want, just to finish this thought, is, and I think this does exist in a couple of formats, is something that can, create decks for us, create presentations at the click of a button, because there is no greater kind of like sap of my time, and there's no, obviously, everything's very personal when it comes to deck creation. Every slide, every bit of text, every data, every chart, every illustration, it's all very personal, but my goodness, they take time.
I have spent a lot of time testing out tools on presentation, to develop, automate presentations. Everyone on LinkedIn pretends like there are tools that work. I am not convinced yet. I think you can get tools to create the content, but there's the branding, there's just so much, there's the structure, there's just so much to a presentation that's more complicated than what you're saying also about it just being a personal thing. Yeah, I certainly spend quite a bit of time in presentations, and the day we have a few different priorities within Webprofits that we have. If we can figure this out with AI, it'll have a huge impact. So presentations are one. Auditing paid media, that's one we're really interested in. Can we find a way to pull, through an API, likely, our paid media campaign data and build an audit process that we can actually find opportunities through? That would be a game changer. Another is actually just getting Whisper. I don't know if you're across Whisper, which is audio to text model, but that can basically just replace all our transcription. So there's a bunch of these things that we've kind of said, they're on the list. If we can figure that out, then, that's going to add a lot of value. But God, the top of my list is fully presentations. I can't wait for the world where that is a smooth part of my life.
Yeah, I'd agree with that sentiment. A lot of those tools, a lot of the things that you mentioned there, I've seen, because I think managing all the information, if you're on Twitter, then, I feel for you. I am also a fellow sufferer on Twitter, but anybody out there is also on Twitter. The amount of information that you're getting, the number of different tools, and that you constantly, we're probably all opening more tabs. If you're one of these early adopters who's very intrigued by the world of AI and all the advancements we're seeing, the number of tools and the number of things that we're signing up for, because you've got all these incredible creators that are trying to make relevance to businesses and to people from this technology. And that's really great to see, but it's going to take some time perhaps for certain aspects of those tools to really be actually tangible, that's going to make a difference to your day-to-day, but it's going to come in time.
That's right. Yeah. Before we wrap up, do you want to just tell us a little bit more about contentautomation.ai, what you're developing there?
So if you think about tools like Jasper, which previously Jarvis, copy.ai, there's a whole plethora of really cool copy creation tools out there. We've obviously had a conversation today about this new technology and the adoption rate. And a lot of businesses maybe not knowing exactly what it is that they want to do with it. Maybe, it's an agency asking those questions. Maybe it's a different type of business, direct to consumer, B2B, whatever, asking those questions. And I thought to myself, well, okay, until I managed to kind of build a fully fledged automated content solution, I know that I've got clients that are asking questions about this technology and how it's going to impact what it is that they do. So what I've done is I've created a consultancy service that integrates both the creation of artificially intelligent text generative, text transforming, large language model driven copy to pages, as well as human edited professional copy editors, professionally reviewed copy as well. So incorporating those two things to create a more seamless way and a more cost effective way of being able to create the written word. So obviously utilizing the API, we will essentially kind of we'll ideate for you. We'll obviously do all the keyword research and understand what it is that you want to create for. If it's a specific project, a specific taxonomy on your website, or a certain type of, or maybe it's just blog posts or something along those lines, and then train the data, feed in the information, create the specific prompts and parameters that are going to get the output that you require. We've got a library of those now. Well, I've got a library of those now that I've created over the course of the last 6 months or so. And then ultimately be able to create that, to get the human review, to do the AI detection and plagiarism checks that are so important, and then to be able to deliver the copy to clients. So, we can deliver via CSV or via a different format. We can import to WordPress, that kind of thing. So it's just essentially kind of like a full service proposition for being able to get you the content that you need at a much more affordable rate. I know that the creation of the written word for web projects can be quite costly, and it can be tricky to achieve. So yeah, we've built a service to be able to kind of fully manage that for businesses. I know I work with lots of different brands every day, and we're creating copy for them. And as we said, content is always going to be subjective, and it should be. And I don't necessarily think we're in a place where we're definitely not in a place where we can create content using AI and then just immediately put it on your website and be done with it for numerous reasons, right? Not just obviously the fact that it would be detected as AI, very likely, unless you've sort of spun the text in some way, but also as well because it's just going to read awful, and it's going to be terrible user experience. So, it's really important, obviously, to be able to have a proposition that combines not just AI, but also obviously the professional human editors. And so I see this as an opportunity to be able to create some pretty compelling content for brands. And yeah, we've already done it for a few businesses that are near and dear to my heart. So looking forward to continuing on that mission as Amazing. The AI tools continue to evolve and they continue to get better. I'm sure our proposition will grow in tandem.
I think it's a great place to wrap up. Just on the theme of we don't know where everything's going, and so really, a lot of us, and I can see this approach that you're taking here is about developing the skills and the mindset of the approach that will make sure that whatever's next we're ready for and we can make the most of. And we know that ChatGPT and the next, language model that comes out, they're going to change the game in different ways. But the skills that people are developing right now, like yourself, in the content work that you're doing, and more broadly across API, I feel confident that they're going to serve us well in whatever the next step of this is. And that's what I'm trying to really communicate to people and businesses is that we don't assume that the prompts that we're using right now will be the prompts that we're using in 6 months. But we do think that the way of thinking, the knowledge, the approach that we're developing right now is going to be applicable. And so people need to get in the game and really build that skill set as quickly as possible. Tony, thank you so much for coming on the Strategy Led podcast. I've learned a ton. I really appreciate it. Where should people go to connect with you? It sounds like Twitter is probably the best place.
Yeah, you can contribute to my Twitter following at Anthony Lavall. That's Anthony Anthony Lavall Lavall.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for having me, Ben.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Wherever you're listening or watching, please like or follow the Strategy Led podcast so you don't miss an episode. We're going to continue to talk to experts like Tony during this time of disruption so that we can really change the game in growth marketing. Thanks so much for listening.